right, so I think we're live streaming and I think we're good to go. Hello, everyone. If you are here for, oh wait, let's see if there are people coming. Yeah, perfect, okay. So yeah, hi everyone. So if you're here for the Northeastern Data Core Data Science Career Panel, you've successfully clicked on the right Zoom link and you're in the right place. So welcome all to today's event. My name's Haley. I'm the project coordinator for the Northeastern Data Core at the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub. And alongside me is my teammate and co-project coordinator, Abhishek Sinha. You'll be hearing from both of us today, especially Abhishek, as he'll be moderating the panel discussion. And speaking of the actual panel, we have an amazing lineup of panelists today. So we have Edwood Brice, a junior data scientist at MassMutual, Julia Stoyanovich, a professor of computer science and engineering at NYU Tandon School of Engineering, and Chang, director of data science and artificial intelligence at Novartis. So if you have any questions or comments for the panelists, moderators, or the broader NSDC community anytime during the panel, please direct them in the Q&A chat. We have facilitators and volunteers who will help to attend to the Q&A chat and help you in any way possible with that. And there will also be some time after the formal event, so from 4 to 4:15, for you all to be able to pose questions to the panelists for them to answer. So yeah, we have a lot in store for you all today. So just sit tight. We'll begin shortly at 3. All right, so I see a few more people are starting to join. Just a reminder, welcome everyone. You're in the right place to see a Northeastern Data Core Data Science Career Panel. We'll be starting shortly at 3, or yeah, at 3 p.m. So in a few minutes. So just sit tight and we'll begin shortly. All right, and we are at the top of the hour. So welcome everyone to the Northeastern Data Core Data Science Career Panel. We're all super excited for this. This is our third panel event in our Data Science Career Panel series, and we have a lot planned for you all today. I'm Haley. I'm the project coordinator of the NSDC and also undergrad at Columbia University. You'll also be hearing from my co-moderator, Abhishek Sinha, who is a graduate at Columbia, or graduate student at Columbia University, and also project coordinator for the NSDC, and a lineup of our great panelists. So we have Edwood, Brice, Julia Stoyanovich, and Chang that you all will hear from today. So let's just get right into it and start with today's agenda. Paul, if you can go on to the next slide, please. Great. So before we get into it with the panel discussion, I'll be discussing more about the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub and the Northeast Student Data Core. So I know a lot of you are eager to either jumpstart or enhance your data science experience, whether that's through learning, teaching, volunteering, or working. So I'm going to give you all more information about the various resources the NSDC has to offer for you all to browse and use via our website. And during this time, you'll also hear from Abhishek as he talks about more about, volunteering opportunities and ways for you to get involved with the NSDC. And then we have the main attraction, the panel itself. So during this time, you'll also hear from Abhishek and our three great panelists. And they'll dive into a deeper discussion regarding their pursuit of data science and, diverse specialties regarding data science. And once the panel is over and it's 4 p.m. Eastern, there'll be an after-hours Q&A session where volunteers from NSDC's newest initiatives called The Real, which we'll talk about a little, will ask panelists any unanswered questions the audience has posted in the Q&A chat. So Paula, next slide, please. Okay, so the hub. So the Northeastern Data Core is brought to you all by the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub. We like to just call ourselves the hub. So here at the hub, we like to also call ourselves a community convener and collaboration hub. We create and enable a network designed to fuel data science innovation through diverse and inclusive community partnerships, whether that's through academia, higher ed, K-12, STEM programs, industry, nonprofit, really anyone who wants to be a part of a network of people in data science. And these partnerships allow us to connect with students, communities, and institutions across the United States and also around the world. Shout out to any international attendees. And a really essential part of the mission of the hub is to increase and expand data science capacity and talent across different areas of focus. So as you can see, we have 4 main focus areas. The first is education and data literacy. And under this focus area, the Northeastern Data Core is our premier program and the one you'll be learning more about today. Under health, we have the COVID Information Commons, which provides a portal to over 1,000 NSF-funded COVID research grants and a community of collaboration and support. Actually, the NIH has recently joined this community. And then there's the urban to rural communities where we have our working group. Finally, there's responsible data science, including security, privacy, and ethics. One of our cool programs under this area is the Connected Healthcare Cybersecurity Workshop Series, where we actually have a workshop coming up on June 16th on data and device identity, validation, and interoperability in connected healthcare. So stay tuned for that as well. And also something that's kind of off the radar is, like I said, we have this new initiative under the hub called The Real. So that stands for Research, Experience, and Leadership Program. So the Real program provides volunteer opportunities for students in various academic programs to really get involved with projects that enable scientific and societal impact across all the focus areas of the hub. So soon you'll be able to learn more about volunteering opportunities through the hub and the NSDC. And get access to the webpage link to learn more and apply to be a volunteer. But as for now, you can access more information on each of these focus areas and all the programs on our website at anybigdatahub.org/about. Oh, if you can go on to the next slide, please. Great, so we're delighted that the NSDC can provide So the NSDC is a community developed initiative that provides resources and opportunities for students to learn data science. The breadth of it is really the community. So all these faces that you see here make up the NSDC founding committee, which really leads the effort. And they come from academia, industry, just really all over when it comes to data science. And they kind of devise 3 specific teams. So there's a content pedagogy team, the peer instructor and mentoring team, and the outreach team. And they all work to do different things for the NSDC. So for example, content pedagogy has really provided different learning and pedagogical content for learners of data science. Peer instructor and mentoring team has helped with creating mentorship opportunities and volunteering opportunities to outreach for students or underrepresented communities when it comes to data science. And the outreach team has built and curated different initiatives such as the Data Science Career Panel for us to kind of extend our outreach and provide experiences and opportunities for people to learn more about data science and progress in their data science experience. So you can learn more about that at anybigdatahub.org/NSDC. Next slide, please. And yeah, so we are now delighted that the NSDC can provide free online resources for learners and educators of all ages and backgrounds. So there's the Learner Central, where you can learn more about the data science fundamentals based on difficulty. So the content really ranges from introductory to intermediate to advanced. And it also encompasses curated lessons on data science ethics and programming, which is really cool. And then there's the Educator Central, which you can see on the far right side. So for those educators in high school, college, or even for library programs, we've included videos, presentations, lecture notes, and code examples from places like IBM, UC Berkeley, MIT, and other organizations to really help you build a comprehensive data science curriculum. And then in the middle right there is a screenshot of the volunteer video library for both learners and educators, which houses videos on data science topics created by NSDC volunteers, including Columbia University master's students who walk you through the content with each video, not only adding their insights, but also their faces to the videos to really humanize the curriculum. And on the next slide, we have 2 NSDC resources. One is for data science career development, and the other is for NSDC Chapter Central. So we know that a lot of you are looking for career opportunities and guidance when it comes to the job market and job searches. So Career Central is a place where we have job source websites related to data science like Data Umbrella, Diversify Tech, and Job Tensor, where you can really explore jobs, companies, and communities in the tech and science field. And Career Central also lists data science interview resources. So Career Central is the place you want to be to find the latest job listings. If you want to polish up your resume or cover letters, or even practice technical and behavioral interviews. And then for Chapter Central, NSDC chapters are really a net of student-led localized NSDC communities. So each chapter aims to extend the mission of the NSDC at a local level and a local version of the NSDC by creating a community of support for chapter members and others in their community through development initiatives. So that could be through one-on-one mentorship opportunities, providing data science curriculum and use cases to local underserved institutions, or even hosting data science coffee chats. Overall, these initiatives really aim to educate learners in data science fundamentals and provide them with mentorship, research, and career opportunities in data science. So if you want to learn more about how you can start or join the chapter, or if you want to look through the resources on Career Central, like I said earlier, more information on all of these can be found at Northeast or anybigdata.org/NSDC. So now I'm going to hand over the virtual mic to Abhishek, our moderator for today's panel, and also head inventor of the Volunteer Central. So he'll talk more about NSDC's volunteering opportunities and then segue into the panel discussion. Abhishek, take it away.
Thank you so much, Haley, for that wonderful introduction. My name is Abhishek Sinha. I'm a MS in Data Science student at Columbia University, and I also work with the Hub as the same as Haley. So let's start with the volunteering opportunities. So we have a ton of volunteering opportunities with the NSDC, and all are really exciting. And we're always looking forward to more and more interaction with the community and getting the community to engage with us. So we have currently three focus areas in terms of the volunteering that you guys could, anyone could choose to volunteer with. The first is in terms of developing a curriculum and pushing that forward. This includes things such as the video tutorials that you see that you'd be helping create and pushing forth. This could also look like live classes in the future. The second is in terms of mentoring. We have a very active Slack community where different individuals with different backgrounds come and interact, and it's a very helpful community that engages with each other and tries to provide each other with as much support as possible. And we're always looking for individuals that would like to mentor other students or learners that through their experience and the experiences that they've had getting to where they are right now. And finally, of course, another thing that we're looking into in the future is developing use cases, real life data science use cases where you can put forth the knowledge that you acquire and advance data science along any of the focus areas that the hub has, and so on. And of course, mentoring that goes along with it. So yes, so all of these are really exciting opportunities, and you can read more about them through the page that's mentioned right over here, and the link that will be sent in the chat as well, which is on NSDC Volunteer Central. And this is part of the initiative that Haley just mentioned, the real program that we're beginning right now, the Research Experience and Leadership Program. And yeah, of course, I'm looking forward to a lot of you volunteering and engaging with the lot of you. So, of course, Paula, next slide, please. Now, the most exciting part of today. So, Haley already introduced the panelists, but I believe I'll do so once more. We have an exciting group of panelists today with a great amount of varied experience. First, we have Edwood Brice, who's a junior data scientist at MassMutual. Then we have Julia Stoyanovich, who's a professor of computer science and engineering at NYU Tandon. And finally, we have Chang, the director of data science and artificial intelligence at Novartis. So let's begin what promises to be an extremely engaging and interesting next hour for all of us with that. So, Paula, if you could just stop sharing the slides for a bit, then yeah, perfect. So, to kick off this discussion, I believe the best place to start is perhaps asking all of you to share your personal journey in data science and what your experience with it has been so far. So perhaps, Edward, you could kick it off, and then we could proceed with perhaps Julia and then Shane, if it sounds fine.
Sure thing. I guess I could start with the fact that I feel like my journey pretty much started from the day I was born. And I say this because I'm the child of immigrant parents. And like from day one, they pretty much instilled the fact that you're either going to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer. But I'm coming to you as a junior data scientist, so that obviously didn't happen. But I feel like throughout that whole journey, going up until through high school, et cetera, up until college, I honestly thought that I was going to be working in the medical field. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I even entered UMass Amherst, the college that I graduated from in 2019, as a informatics and data science major with the pre-med track attached. So I never really got rid of the pre-med roots, but I started college with the fact that, everyone in my family is related to the medical field in some capacity. Most of the adults are working as nurses or something like that. And most of the people that I was familiar with, having gone through like the college pipeline, had been affiliated with medicine in some way. So I was like, obviously, I guess it just makes sense that I would become a doctor or something like that. I think what it took was an aunt who was familiar with bioinformatics to reach out to me and say like, hey, there's something going on called genomics and evolutionary biology and the overarching field of data science. And I think it would be really interesting if you went and researched that. So as a freshman, I think I was around like 18 years old. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I was like, okay, I will happily look into all of that once I'm settled at school. So once I did that, I realized that a lot of what I was looking for was pretty much reserved for graduate students. All the courses, all the opportunities, things like that. And that was really frustrating for me because I thought that would be an avenue for me to be able to pursue what she had described to me because I thought it was pretty interesting. So I spent that first year trying to see if I could make biology and pre-med work, and I hated it. It wasn't the best experience for me because I honestly felt like I was doing something that was more so the wishes of other people. So like people in my family who were working actively in medicine, etc. So I had to take a stand, and something that UMass Amherst lets you do is craft your own major, and that is called a bachelor's degree with individual concentration. And ultimately, what that enabled me to do was to pick and choose all the courses that I felt made sense for a data science career moving forward. So this was me as a freshman, getting my bearings, trying to make a major on my own, and being really happy and excited about it. Ultimately, what that made me realize is that the path that you have to pick going through college, it just has to be yours. It can't be something that someone instills within you. It has to be something that you actually enjoy doing. So from sophomore year to senior year, I latched on to every course I could find that could fulfill that interest in working in data science eventually. And what I did was adapt a lot of what we were doing at UMass in the informatics program to basically provide me with the framework of courses and opportunities that I could then pair up with other courses that I was finding at UMass. And in retrospect, I feel like that made my major feel really one-to-one to me, in that it felt like it was built for me. It was literally built for me. And as a result, I was able to apply for opportunities and feel prepared for them. I was able to take my courses and feel like, wow, these courses are actually building up towards something that I can see myself working in. Because oftentimes in majors, you're taking a bunch of requirements and it's hard to see like where you are going with those courses that you are required to take. So because I was picking the courses, it ultimately led to me being within a major that made sense for me. And by the time I was a senior, I had changed my major's title like 5 or 6 times. I don't remember all the titles, but that's something that the bachelor's degree of individual concentration lets you do. But what I had realized is that I never really let go of my pre-med roots or my biology roots because I still felt like there was something there for me. But instead of like abandoning it completely, what I ended up doing was just still trying to find opportunities that paired that with data science. So I was like in a bioinformatics lab. I was in a data science REU opportunity one year, and that had to do with biology. So I just kept looking for opportunities to make things work, seeing where I fit, and ultimately gauging the temperature. And the journey of doing that ultimately resulted in me being able to walk the stage, happily saying that I am a major within the informatics and data science major, one of one, because I had made it. And if anything, I felt like that whole process of treating my university experience like a buffet really helped me, because it allowed me to see exactly what was meant for me and not pursue the things that didn't necessarily interest me. And in the end, I felt like that made it really easy for me to pair it up with an opportunity on the other side, which was the junior data scientist role that I currently have at MassMutual. So in retrospect, I feel like this experience overall was long-winded. It was definitely not linear at all. I tell people the story and then I'm like, wow, there was that detail I completely forgot about the last 5 times I told it. But if anything, I want to make it clear that when it comes to finding your role in data science or any other technical career, the journey probably won't be linear. I feel like you're going to have to bump around a couple times, change your major title if you can several times before you ultimately stumble upon something that actually fulfills you and your interests.
Thank you so much, Edward, for that. And that's actually advice that I think I personally can also really use, because as a master's student right now, I see what you mean when you say it's a non-linear journey. You move around quite a bit before you reach an endpoint. But yeah, so perhaps Julia, you'd like to continue with your answer as well. What
Sure.
exactly has been your experience with data science so far and your journey?
Sounds good. So thank you for having me here. And Edwood and I have a couple of things in common. I'll get to that as I speak. But there are also some very important differences, at least in the way that we will articulate our journeys to where we are at the moment. So I am an assistant professor of computer science and engineering, and also of data science at New York University. And I also recently founded and direct the Center for Responsible AI at NYU. So how did I get here? I am an immigrant myself, as you can hear from my accent. I am originally from the former Soviet Union, from Russia. And I am one of very few people of my generation who can say that their grandfather was a programmer. So I'm quite a bit older than Edwood and Abhishek. And my grandfather, in fact, was a programmer who worked with the second generation of computers that ran on transistors and where memory was measured in cubic meters, as he used to tell me. So he was actually my original computer science and math tutor, although the way that his thinking was about algorithms and about computer science, and he didn't, of course, know what data science was, is very different from where we are today. But many of the principles, and these are principles of clean and clear formalization, of understanding the objectives, of understanding that a model of the world is always a model, and that it's important to pick an appropriate model. It will never be perfect. And there are some trade-offs in the way that you pick this model for the purpose of your particular problem that he instilled in me from a very, very early age. And another thing that I like to mention about him, I'm really proud of him, was that he also was a rocket scientist. So he worked in the Soviet space program, and he was one of the people who helped plot the trajectories of the Sputnik back in the late 1950s. So this to me is very inspiring because he himself did not at the time have a college degree. I mean, this was right after World War II, so he was getting his education as he progressed through his career. But he always had this drive and this sort of taste for problems and this ability to really dig in and get a problem solved. And also the types of things that he and his colleagues at the time were able to do with second generation computers, with computing power that, you know, is far less than what we have in our little devices that we all hold is also very impressive to me. So having learned from my grandfather, again, at a very early age, and he always encouraged me to go into math. And so I feel very fortunate as a woman to have had that encouragement in my family. I then moved together with my parents to another country, to Yugoslavia, the former Yugoslavia. So yet another former country, right? The Soviet Union is no more. And the former Yugoslavia is also no more. So specifically in that country, we lived in Serbia, in its capital, Belgrade. And there I went to an absolutely amazing high school called the Belgrade Mathematical High School, where we had lots of math taught to us already at the high school level and lots of computer science as well. So already in high school, I learned my first programming language, which at the time was Pascal. Python didn't yet exist. Java didn't yet exist. I learned C++, I learned assembly, I learned different kinds of math. And again, I feel that I'm just extremely fortunate to have had that opportunity from the age of 14 to really be exposed to some of these topics. Kind of the flip side of that, being fortunate in going to that school, is that, of course, the field has always been a very strongly male-dominated field. And so in my class of 21 students, 6 were girls. And we used to joke, but it really isn't a joke, that if this doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. So I'm still in touch with many of the women who went to my high school, and I see many of them here, and they're much more successful than the guys, frankly. So I think that proverb works a little bit. And then so another thing that I should say about my high school is that when I moved to Serbia, I had a lot of drive to learn math, to learn computer science, but I came from a school in Russia that specialized in languages and not in mathematics. And so the first semester that I went to that high school, I really struggled. I had Fs my first semester in all of my math subjects. And I worked really, really hard. And my teachers recognized the progress that I had made over the first semester. And I ended the school year already, that first school year, with all A's. And so the reason, again, that I bring this up is that even if you don't feel that you're prepared for something, schooling is a time when you can go out and take a risk, when you can take a subject that you don't feel that you're prepared for, but that you really love. And if you are in a good environment, your environment will support you and will recognize the slope more than the starting point, so to say. So then from Serbia, I came to the United States. I came here to go to 12th grade of high school, because unfortunately, this was a time when the former Yugoslavia was falling apart and all the better professors and all the better students were leaving to go get an education elsewhere. And I graduated from high school in Boston, and I went to do my undergrad at UMass Amherst, like Edwood. And there I studied computer science and mathematics because I really loved both subjects. And I took an opportunity to get engaged in research very early on. And I recommend that for all of you to do. I hung out with a research group in math and with another one in computer science to choose which subject I like better. And I realized that in computer science, it takes knowing less to be creative than in math, because math is just thousands of years old, right? And so I ended up going into a computer science career, and I never regretted it, not for a moment. I'm going to wrap here just to say that my path, in a sense, was much more straight than Edward's, right? I always had an affinity for computer science. I always knew that I wanted to follow that path, but still there are obstacles along the way that you need to overcome. Thanks.
Thank you so much for that. And it's always inspiring to hear how the individuals got to where they are and why they chose, the subject that they chose to familiarize themselves with. Right? Yeah. So now, Shane, would you like to kick off with your journey as well?
Sure. Yeah. So good afternoon and maybe good evening, depending on where you are located. So from my experience and training, I would say my data science started with my thesis preparation in grad school. So I did my undergrad in electrical engineering, where I focus more on the optics and the signal processing. And when I go for my PhD, I focus more on the signal processing. I remember one day I had a conversation with my advisor regarding what topics should I pick for my thesis. And he mentioned to me that two-dimensional processing will be more challenging than one dimension. And that makes sense, right? Because you experience more data. And remember that the data size here is n squared instead of 2n. So that means you have exponential growth. And when you have much more data, so that means you can play with more different models. And by models, typically we mean, we just create different algorithms so we can have an interesting output like a prediction, classification, or whatever. But extending my advisor's comment, so I was thinking, maybe the three-dimensional data analysis will be more challenging. And of course, but what would be those kind of data? That was almost like 20 years ago. So at that moment, we don't have a very abundant data. The three-dimensional data will be coming from two sources. One is the video. As you know, video is just a sequence of images. So when you consider X, Y, Z, and the time domains, that constitute the 3D data set. Another example is regarding the medical imaging of a stationary organ. For example, we have a capability to imaging a slice of an organ, but when we take the slices over the three-dimensional space, then we can acquire the volumetric data. So that will give me the 3D data set. But I was kind of more eager to challenge myself. What would be the possible way to have a 4D analysis? So I searched around and then figure out, okay, in our body, there's an organ that's beating all the time. So that's the heart. If we can imagine the heart and take the volumetric data through the cardiac cycle, then I can have the 4D data. So I try to collect data and try to find the collaborator in our department of biology, and then decide to go for the cardiac MRI as my topic to crunch the 4D MRI data. I would say that was my initial step in the data science. And after I finished my thesis, I joined Harvard Medical School as the scientist in the bioinformatics. This field is very interesting. And because in the past, my experience purely just on the image, but in the bioinformatics area, we handle not only the image data, but also omic data. As you know, that was like 15, 20 years ago, the genomics technology was booming. From a single small chip, you can access a large number of genes or DNA information. And meanwhile, you can access many patients or many sample subjects in a single batch of experiment. So that means you can have more than like a 4-dimensional data. I would say lots of high dimensional data, and from the different samples. And on the other hand, remember in 2007, iPhone was launched. I think the smartphone was the driving force for the big data, because in the past, people just talk about the big data from the biomedical area. However, in our daily life, we start to be able to collect more data than we can imagine. Your device becomes like a sensor. You have pictures taken every single day. You have a video being recorded from different occasions. You can record your voice, sounds, and iPhone or some smartphones can record your geolocations or browsing history. So that means we are facing not only just a single modality, but we are facing different modalities, not only in the biomedical area, but in our daily life. So this trend of big data, that caused me more headache in my work actually, because nobody really taught me regarding how to handle big data in school. What I was learning just handle a single type of data modality, although high dimensional, but up to the 4 dimension. But now in my job, I need to handle multi-modal from different sources. And of course, that depends on your application. You may handle different types of data. However, multi-modal always there. So I start to learn by myself regarding some underlying data engineering, because we face the underlying infrastructure issue. How much data storage you need, how much compute you need, how much data transfer you need, and what kind of model you can handle. And no computer able to load all the data in a single machine. You need to handle sequentially to crunch the data sequentially. So those are all the new things. So I tried to learn by myself. I think that was a very hard time, because nobody really have a solution. Now we have a cloud platform. We established platform from Amazon, from Microsoft Azure, Google, but that dating back to 15 years ago. The cloud computing was not so robust, and the PC was not so strong as your smartphone today. So I think there's lots of learning curve for being a data scientist, at least from my perspective. And then I think after I tried to catch up lots of things, and the whole community also created different ideas regarding the data models. Once we have a good infrastructure, then people can start to play with stronger, powerful data modeling. For example, the neural network. Nowadays, people call that would be the artificial intelligence. But I would say just having the stronger computing power, so you can have more complicated computing models able to crunch more data, so give you a better result and handle much more data and much more different data modalities. So I would say, in summary, this is kind of my journey toward the data scientist, and that will be involving lots of not only depending on your interest, right? First, you need to have interest, but that also depends on how deep you want to into this area. because there are lots of learning curve for me, and I'm pretty sure for you guys, this area is booming, and there will be new technology coming. There could be new data modalities coming, and people may not know how to handle that. And new machine learning models coming up every single day. So you may need to learn by yourself instead of just sitting in the classroom and listen to your professor's teaching. So you need to have that capability, then I'm pretty sure you can excel yourself in the future. All right, I will stop here and then transition back to Abby.
Thank you so much, Shane. And that's actually great advice. I mean, the field is so dynamic that there's things coming up every day, in fact. So there's always a learning curve. You always learn more the more you read. I think so another point of confusion, and this is something that it's the next question we'd like to ask you. It's how do individuals, and specifically how did you choose the field that you wanted to specialize in? And I feel like you've already touched upon that within your answers already in your journeys. So perhaps you could tell us, what was it about your field that made you want to stick with the field that you're in? And how exactly is data science used in your field? Maybe Julia, you could go for it first.
Sure.
Academia, anything. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of restart from where I left off, right? So I left when I said that I went to college at UMass Amherst, and I have to say that at the time, people didn't have their own personal computers. So I didn't have my own personal computer, and neither did many of my classmates, right? We all learned programming on a whiteboard or a blackboard, and then we all did our assignments in a computer lab. So that's just as another kind of a historical thing for you to picture. When I went to college, AI was all the rage, just like it is now, but it was a very different kind of AI, right? So right away, I wanted to study artificial intelligence, and I took a few classes. But then when I graduated from college, I went and worked in the startup industry in New York City. And AI was not something that people did practically. Machine learning was not actually something that was, at a point where we could adopt it or that was in demand. And so I landed in a data management role at a company called Juno Online Services that was the first free internet service provider. And the way that we made money at Juno was by collecting a lot of information, a questionnaire essentially that users filled out. And then based on that questionnaire, we would target ads to them. So this was before algorithmic targeting. This was before DoubleClick, before Google's and other platforms ad serving capabilities. Rather, this was a kind of a manual query-based targeting of ads. An advertiser wants this ad shown to people who have a bachelor's in computer science in a certain age range. You told me that this is your degree and your age, you're going to see this ad. And so my job straight out of college was essentially figuring out which ads go to whom, who sees what ads, what we report to the advertisers. And so this was just really, really interesting, really exciting data management that then made me realize the beauty of data and the kinds of problems that data would throw at us, that we never would really be bored, right? And as an academic, I can tell you that I ended up in an academic path because I was getting bored every year or every 2 years by the things that I was doing. So industry has this capability of kind of figuring out what you're good at and then assigning the same task to you over and over and over. And some people find comfort in that. And to me, that was maddening. So I was changing jobs. I had 3 different jobs in the 5 years that I was in industry. And then I ended up going to graduate school to Columbia to get a master's and then a PhD in computer science, and specifically specializing in data management, databases. And data management arguably is really one of the precursors of data science, right? The fact that we have the word data in the title is not coincidental. And then from there, I did a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania. And then I took a faculty position at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And 3 years ago, I moved into a faculty position at NYU. And what I work on here is a topic that I find really, really exciting. That is, I think, the most important thing for us to be thinking about in data science, and that is how to make the use of data-driven algorithmic decision-making socially sustainable. How do we make it so that we don't break society by targeting ads too well? for example. So I'm going to stop here. I guess I can pick this up a little bit later, but this is more or less the beginning of my what to do within your discipline spiel.
Thank you so much. And it's always interesting hearing how individuals end up choosing the domain that they're working with. So perhaps next, Shane, you could go ahead and share with us how it is that, and what it is that attracts you about the domain that you work with and what data science does there.
Yeah, sure. So I think this is a very important question. Every single person looking for your career should ask yourself what you are interested in, what will be attracting to you. And from my personal experience, my interest in core computational modeling or machine learning development. So typically, I would say I don't really care about the applications. So any application, I will love it. That could be applied the machine learning or AI to biomedicine, applied to finance, applied to self-driving car, even applied to the legal analysis, applied to retail marketing analytics. So that's how I position myself. Therefore, during my career, not only in the academia, but also I have experience in a self-driving car company, and also in the pharma, and also serve as like advisor to biotech startups and the high-tech startups. So that's how I position myself, because I align very well with my interest. My core is a computational model. So for the audience, I will say, first you really need to know what you are strong in and what will be your interest. Maybe you are interested in history, and then data science becomes just a tool for you to utilize, to explore like historical documents, right? Or maybe you are strong in the economics or financial, then the data science becomes like your analytics helper instead of developing the models. But of course, if you are strong in the computer science or in the statistics or in math, I encourage you to consider maybe develop a next generation of models so that can be helping some applications. So I would say, yeah, really need to think about what would be your strength and what you are interested in, and then look for what you can be applied. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. And now, Edward, would you also like to share exactly it is about your domain that drew you in?
Yeah. For sure. For context, in contrast to my panel members, I didn't know anything about data science before I was 18. So I didn't hear it until I was starting college, and it just wasn't in my vocabulary. I didn't know anything about computer science. I didn't even know how to program, but I did know that I loved computers. So from a very young age, my dad always made sure there was a computer in the house, and there were always packs of games and all sorts of things. And it was always pretty cool for me to like fiddle around with MS-DOS and do things in the command line. But I never foresaw that as something that I could make use of in a career, because I didn't necessarily knew it existed at the time. So I think it was when I ended up walking through the buffet halls of academia, did I realize that joining a bioinformatics lab really made the difference for me in terms of understanding what was actually interesting for me. In that lab, we were programming in R. I had never programmed in R ever. And my PI, Dr. Courtney Babbitt, was really supportive and just really helpful in that experience in learning R. I mean, it was then that I realized that I had a real affinity for R. And I think that was around my freshman summer. So when I realized that programming was it for me, I ended up like finding every course I could take. I ended up doing every independent project that I could. I ended up branching out to other languages and just learning what was out there for me in terms of just strengthening my skills in programming. And then once I started taking data science courses in my curriculum, I feel like my love for being able to do things with computers in that manner just flourished, in that I felt really good about generating analyses and coming up with scripts and algorithms that I could present to peers and just get something done. And I always thought that was really cool to be able to do with my computer that I had always loved to experiment with when I was younger. I think ultimately what really made the difference for me throughout the opportunities that I was in, whether it was in that research lab with Dr. Courtney Babbitt or RAU opportunities and et cetera, I think it was the fact that I was in environments where my mentors and peers wanted to see me succeed as much as they wanted to see themselves succeed. Like everybody was like encouraging each other. I felt like everyone made it so that it was a mutual experience in terms of what we were getting out of whatever opportunity it was. And I feel like I gravitate towards environments like that. And it just so happened to be environments where data science was being worked on, where computer science was flourishing, where everyone was programming. So as a note, I feel like, sometimes you may not even necessarily know what it is that you want to pursue when you start high school, college, even graduate school. Just like I mentioned earlier, it's really important to really spread yourself out. But once you do, and you focus on those areas where you feel like you have some affinity for it, try to find those communities to kind of like build up some, I guess, interest around what it is that you're doing with other people. And I feel like once you do that, you can really get a sense of like whether or not you could see yourself doing anything with that in the coming years as an opportunity of some sort. Just being with other people just really made that clear for me, because then it stopped being something that I was seeing in my head alone, but it started to be becoming something that I was seeing in real time in all those environments that I was participating in as an undergrad and then as a graduate student.
Thank you. And for me as well, I went into data science particularly because I was exposed to quite a lot of individuals that had an interest in data science, and I ended up being exposed to a lot of projects that drew me in then. So thank you so much for that advice. And, I'd completely agree with that. That's so true. So perhaps a good follow-up to this is specifically now towards the roles that you guys are engaged in right now. What are the skills that you believe that individuals could work on to get where you are right now? This could be something like domain-specific subjects that you believe that they should take up, perhaps that would better prepare them for a role such as you have right now. Or it could be something like just, working and researching right now, or things along those lines. So perhaps Shane, you could kick off this answer.
So I think that's a very important question, and people always want to know what they should prepare, not only for passing the exams, but also try to get a job or advance their career. So I would say there will be 4 areas you may need to consider. The very fundamental one will be the coding. All the data is sitting in the data storage, but you need to have a program able to read and process, analyze, then show some results. And without the coding or scripting capability, you cannot really do the work unless you hire another person to do that for you, but that is not your purpose, right? So I would say the first step, you will be able to do some work in terms of the coding. And the coding, people frequently ask, what will be the coding language? I would say in the current area, Python will be like a standard. But of course, that depends on the companies and industry. Some industry may want to use a MATLAB, for example. Some may want to use R. But I would say starting with Python, that could be not wrong. The second will be possible just mathematics or machine learning models building. It may not be applied to every single person because some would like to focus more on just like a statistical analysis, but some may be stronger in the math and would like to develop machine learning models. However, if you do not want to dive into math to create next generation machine learning models, you should be able to be aware of what will be existing in the world, because there are so many researchers in the world nowadays, and they create different models every single week, I would say. So if you are able to digest and be aware of what will be existing, then most of the models are open sourced that you can plug into your platform to play with. If you are strong or have interest, then you can extend the model or build your own model. The third area is kind of equal to my previous answer regarding what application you will apply the data science to, whether you will be core in the math or you want to be more application driven. For example, you want to go to Wall Street, then of course you need to have knowledge in the finance, right? I don't think that's necessary for data scientists to get every single application, but at least you have interest in some of them. And when you want to get a job or advance your career, you want to be proficient to speak the same language in that domain area. So that means you need to have some domain knowledge. And the fourth one will be the soft skills. Why I think that's important even for the entry-level engineers, because when you have a result, you need to present it to somebody else, including your colleagues, including your boss. Or even in school, you need to present a result to your professor, to your classmates. You need to make sense regarding the results. So the soft skills in the junior people, I would say, how to deliver your result and make sense of your findings, that's very important. And if you are like a senior person, the soft skills becomes you need to kind of capture the trend of the data science. So what do I mean? I can use an example from my previous job in the self-driving car company. In there, we are looking at the data. We need to take the action right away. As you know, we have a car being installed with lots of sensors, and then we can perceive the driving environment. Once we get the data, we need to make decision right away, and to avoid hitting other people or hitting other car, and also avoid being hit by the trailing car. So that's a totally different data science project. You need to analyze the data and get action correct. In my current job in Novartis, which is a pharmaceutical company, so we don't do the online that much. Mostly just collect data first and then analyze the data and then try to see what are the outcome to help the patients. So that will be totally different data science goals. So I would say for the senior people, if you are able to capture what would be important for your institute regarding in academia or in the industry, and then what would be the important technology in the world, then you can apply it to solve your problem. I think that's important to help your employer to either succeed in industry or in the research. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. That's great advice once again. And you're right. Your insights are only as valuable as how well you can communicate them to the rest of your peers. So that's definitely true. Perhaps, Edward, you can go next.
Sure. So, Shane just mentioned following the trend in his answer. And I thought back to when I was an undergrad. And I remember my first introductory programming language was Java. And if you look now, Java is not necessarily being used as much anymore in the data science field. It's mostly Python, R, and SQL. But as a freshman, I didn't necessarily know that because I was just getting my bearings of the field, and the actual skills that I would need wasn't necessarily apparent to me in real time. So something that I ended up realizing over the years as a senior peer advisor for informatics majors was that it's really helpful to kind of just like go to the job itself. So skip the whole pipeline and look at what jobs are asking people nowadays. That way you're able to see what's currently in demand. You're able to see what is relevant for the types of jobs that you may be interested in. And you can kind of build yourself out a curriculum that you could then begin to follow on your own or at your university, high school, and et cetera. So when I would share this with my mentees, what they would end up doing is picking out courses that made sense for whatever job they were kind of forecasting for. Learning languages that they hadn't heard of before, but were mentioned by these job applications, and kind of just positioning themselves to take on opportunities such that they'd be prepared for internships that could come along that was appropriate for whatever it was that they were looking at on LinkedIn, Indeed, and etc. Sure, there are very landmark things that you definitely need to learn. You need to have a really strong base in terms of statistics, math, programming, and etc. But the sea is so wide. You can spend all your time learning and actively doing things, or you can kind of like shrink the ocean just a little bit and kind of pick out what really makes sense for the types of roles that you're really interested in. I'd like to call this process like the reverse job search. So like if you're really early on in your career, and you have kind of like a gist of where you want to be, look up whatever that is in LinkedIn or whatever your favorite job search portal is, and then kind of take their requirements as a rubric, like a really loose rubric. If they're asking for proficiency in a particular language, maybe it wouldn't hurt to learn that language over your summer. If they're asking for X amount of years and whatever, I guess maybe programming experience, maybe what you could do is take on some independent projects that are written in some of the languages that they're looking for. So that way, by the time you're like outside the pipeline, so like whether you're like, once you've graduated the program that you're in, you kind of have a footing in the field already, and it's done in a way that is in your own terms.
Thank you, Edward, once more. And now finally, to wrap the question up, Julia, if you could also share any advice.
Sure. So as an academic in the room, I'm going to push back on what Edward said, and also to some extent on what Shane said, and that is, you don't know what you don't know, right? So academic institutions are there and are populated by people who have a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience and have some idea about how to systematically teach you not a specific skill necessarily, but rather teach you how to learn skills that are within the spectrum of that type of skill. So computer programming in particular, as an example, right? It's a very important dimension of data science. It's part knowledge and part skill. So for you to really be able to adjust to changes in the market, to very easily be able to pick up yet another programming language. And let me tell you that, in my memory, and in the time that I was in industry and then in academia, at least 5 languages came and went. And every time that a new language appears, you think, yeah, that's really the one that's going to stick around, and no. And languages are of different kinds. They do really change very frequently. The change from Java to Python was drastic, right? Java is a strongly typed object-oriented language, and Python is not. So if you want to actually build a career in data science and be able to seamlessly pick up the new types of skills that your employer may want you to pick up quickly, you must take data structures and algorithms, and you must take fundamental courses in computer science as well as in mathematics and statistics. Now, part of computer science and data science is knowledge. So this is something that your coursework will dictate, and I don't think you should improvise on that. You really should be taking the requirements. People have thought them through. Part of this is skill, right? So once you have those requirements in place, now you're able to practice. And just listening about programming is not going to teach you to program. No more than watching people dance will teach you how to dance. You actually have to go and dance. And you have to dance for, thousands of hours. And if you've danced for thousands of hours in Java, you'll be able to pick up Python in 500 hours, right? So that's essentially how things work. So that's one thing I'll say, is that you do have access to premier educational institutions, and you should be using what they have to offer. And the second thing I'll say, and this hasn't come up today yet, is that data science is just so successful, so pervasive, that the kinds of products that you build will in fact impact the world. And it's your responsibility professionally and personally to think about the impacts that the products that you build will have on the world. So if there are projects that would pay you a lot of money, but that you don't think should be done, like detecting whether somebody is likely to commit a crime based on their photo, for example, right? I mean, that's, for example, for me would be a taboo project to undertake. You need to really talk to yourself internally as a human to understand whether the kind of a project that is being offered at this company is something that you feel comfortable succeeding, right? If it fails, no one cares. But if it succeeds, are you actually okay saying that you worked on that product? And as an extension of that, days are gone of us using data science and computer science for things that are somehow efficiency oriented only and that are objectively correct, like transferring money from your checking account to your savings and making sure that it doesn't disappear in the transfer, right? Now, the types of software that you build, you always have to think about the ethical, the moral, the legal questions that these raise. And I encourage each and every one of you to educate yourself on these topics. I'm happy to share some resources on this, but it absolutely is a must. We are a successful field that is changing society. It's creating a future, and we each individually are responsible for that.
Thank you so much for giving that perspective, because that is, of course, always very important to keep in mind throughout the process, in fact, as you're learning and so on. So I think it's already 4 o'clock, so let's move on to the next part of the panel. And I'd now like to hand the mic over to Florence Hudson, the Executive Director of the Northeast Big Data Innovation Hub, to both conclude and then begin the Q&A part of this session as well.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Abhishek. And thank you so much, Edwood and Shane and Julia. It was fascinating to listen to your stories, your grandfather's story, and getting all your perspectives. So hopefully what you're all hearing is that there are many paths to data science. Just deciding you're interested is a start. And so we're glad you were here for that. And Paula, if you could project the slides again, and we'll just wrap up and then get into the Q&A that the audience has been inputting, which I really love the questions that you're all sending in. So we'll be getting to those very shortly. So the first thing we want to do is to thank the Outreach Committee, which the Outreach team as part of the Northeast Student Data Corps Founding Committee. And Farouk Garamani actually was one of our incredible helpers today on the panel. So thank you very much for answering questions and putting all the information into the chat and the Q&A. Jennifer is the other co-team leader, Jennifer Oxenford, and you can see the great team that we have. On the next slide, what I would like to do is to thank our presenters today, our panelists. And we have these certificates of appreciation that we will be sending to you. They look great on your phone too. You know, they look nice when they're downsized to a mobile device. You could show everybody. We're very grateful for the time you spent preparing for this, being with us today, and the inspiring stories that you shared about getting into data science and proceeding on your journey. On the next slide, what I'd like to do is to thank Abhishek and Haley for being co-moderators. As a data science career panel for the Northeast Student Data Corps, this was actually the first panel that was co-moderated by 2 students. I co-moderated with Haley in the first one, Farouk co-moderated with Haley in the second one, and we're delighted that the Student Data Corps now has 2 moderators that are students, so undergraduate and graduate students. So you did a wonderful job preparing this whole thing. They were responsible for all of this and leading the execution of it today. And it's wonderful to have you on the team at the Hub. Next slide, please. So what we want to do is invite you to connect with us. You can always go to anybigdatahub.org/NSDC. We'll bring you to the Northeast Student Data Corps page. You can register for our next career panel. We have these every other month, usually on a Friday afternoon, because sometimes people don't have classes on Fridays, and especially during the summer. Join the Slack community. You can look at the videos on YouTube of all the career panels if you like. And I also want to thank Paula, who's on the line with us, who's been helping us out today and projecting the slides for us, which was very, very helpful. And we actually have a couple of other volunteers, as Abhishek and Haley were talking about. So let's get to the next slide, and we're going to go into our after hours office hours Q&A. So what we like to do now is look at the questions in the Q&A. And Abhishek, did you have a plan for that with our student volunteers?
Yes, so we have 2 volunteers with us on the call today, Flavio and Gary, who are going to be asking the questions that are in the Q&A section and a few more that we had received during our initial registration process itself.
Okay, great. So Paula, I think you can stop sharing the Q&A screen now. And so Flavio, would you like to ask the first question?
Yeah, sure, no problem. I have this written down.
go into the Q&A?
Yeah. So the first question would be, could you please expound on the data science pathway from a novice to an expert?
Perhaps, perhaps Julia, you could take the question up.
Sure. Well, I mean, depends on what you mean by an expert, right? There's never perfection is
Yeah.
unattainable. So I think that you should learn the fundamentals, like I said at the end of the last conversation, and then just start practicing your skills. So for me, the path was quite long because I'm an academic, right? Then it actually requires that you get advanced degrees and that you find a faculty position and then kind of proceed through the ranks. But ultimately, whether you get a bachelor's or also a master's depends on the kinds of career objectives that you have.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Flavia. So we're going to want to try to get through all of these. So I'll ask the next one at the top of the Q&A. So what are some of the projects we can work on as a student of data science to prepare for the real world? Anyone want to answer that? The real world. Who lives in the real world? Shane, you live in the real world.
Yeah,
So
I think this is already what's it? So there are so many websites offer the real world data. For example, Kaggle and IEEE data portal. They offer some access to the real world data. So you can just Google around and then figure out what will be the data of your interest and then play with that. That should be doable, I think.
Sorry, I'm just going to add to that. That data is actually, I don't think it's enough. It's a good start for you to start, figuring out if you can work with data at all. But a real world project includes usually also an objective. And it usually also includes a measure of goodness against that objective, right? So I recommend speaking to somebody who has an actual problem and figuring out what it is that they need done. And then as a function of that, looking for data and figuring out how you would then measure whether your system in fact worked to the objective. So Kaggle does also have specifications of the goals of these competitions.
And all of these links to Kaggle and other use case opportunities are actually in the NSDC Learner Central. So maybe Helen, who's one of our other trustee students, or Haruki online, could actually put that into the chat so people can find it in Learner Central. Gary, would you like to ask the next question in the Q&A?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Haley, for having me with Q&A here, and also thanks for amazing presentation from panelists. So we highlight some of those that we share throughout the presentation. The question is, what can new grads and undergrads do to make themselves more competitive in this growing field?
Something that I recommend doing is forming a really intimate relationship with your faculty members, with your peers, and kind of just establishing yourself as a student of data science so that you can all learn together. I say with your professors because oftentimes they have opportunities that cross their desks that they're looking for students to provide them to. So explaining what you are interested in to your professors helps to put your name into their mind such that you're able to communicate with each other on that level. And I say peers because everything's better with the community. And I feel like when you're with friends or people who you can learn in terms of a common interest with, that just makes the goal feel that much more attainable. So as an undergrad student, I talked a lot about making sure that you're spreading yourself out. But I also mentioned that it's important to focus yourself as well. You do that through the means of your courses. You do that through the means of the opportunities that your own university provides. Just making sure that you take on those opportunities as they come along will help to position yourself competitively moving forward so that by the time you're a senior, you've kind of already seen so many of the hallmarks of what this field entails.
Okay. Another question I think that goes along with that, and then Flavio, you can look at the Q&A and see if you want to ask the next one out loud. The next one is, what advice do you have for high school students interested in data science? Ooh, so we have some high school students online. Sometimes we get middle school students too. They might not be typing into the Q&A. So what advice do you have for high school students interested in data science?
May I?
Yes, please.
So this is a bit of a plug, but we run an excellent program at NYU at the Tandon School of Engineering called Arise. I'm going to paste a link to that program. It's very competitive. Where we host high school students, and you don't have to be a senior. You can be a sophomore or a junior. And many of our labs, I've been participating in this program every summer, and it's absolutely amazing. It's for different engineering majors, including data science.
Very cool. Maybe you should put in the link for your comic book series too.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah, I'm waiting for an opportunity. Thank you. So we have been developing a comic book series to explain AI and responsibility and ethics to people. So the one that I just pasted the link to is for the general public. It's on GitHub. We would love your comments. Please share it with your grandmother. And this other one is for more technical folks. So these are longer comics. There are only 2 volumes in this series, and they are for current or future data scientists. And again, everything is on GitHub, open source. Let us know what you think. Thanks, Florence.
And those are also available through the NSDC Learner Central website and our data science resource repository. So Flavio, do you want to look at the Q&A and ask one of those questions?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Florence. There's a question here that states, is a master's degree required for data analytics jobs? He asked because he's a recent graduate in mathematics. He or she kind of switched in the middle of college, but the interest in the field started a bit late, so he didn't do a lot of graduate school searching, he stated there.
I think the short answer is no. Yeah, I mean, as long as you are qualified, I don't care your background, actually. So yeah, that's the short answer.
And to build off of that, from my perspective, a lot of my peers didn't start out with master's degrees. If anything, we're actively getting our degrees right now while we're working. And I feel like that's because starting off more so has to do with your capacity to learn on the go and continue to learn as you're working. But a master's degree is not necessarily explicitly required for most opportunities, at least at the junior position for which I'm in.
Very good. Gary, do you want to ask one of the next questions in the Q&A?
Yeah, sure. I noticed that there's a question for Dr. Julia and Dr. Chang. What are the reasons why you went into academia and industrial?
So I can respond. I was in industry before, and as I mentioned, I was getting bored and changing jobs. And so in academia, you never get to do the same thing twice, which is kind of weird. I mean, you can if you want to, but it gives you the freedom to choose new projects that are different from the ones that you've done before. Of course, it's much more risky, right? Salaries are lower in academia. It's a lot more competitive. You work more hours. But then it's also amazing to be able to interact with students every day. So there are lots of pluses of academic work.
I think I was kind of reverse. I started in academia and then moved to industry. So the reason I was switching is because I try to find the real world applications. That back to like more than 10 years ago, like 15 years ago. Academia was kind of isolated from industry. So I was trying to see how the technologies developed in academia can be applied to real world applications. But I think nowadays the boundary is not so clear in many industry. I mean, in many companies, they have the professor visiting during their sabbatical times. So yeah, I think that also depends on your interest, right? If you like to be more focused, flexible, then academia will be a good fit.
Here's a different type of question, and I work a lot in the healthcare space too, and I know, Shane, that you do. And Edwood at MassMutual, you're related to healthcare too. And Julia, you touch a lot of different things. And somebody is asking about a framework to actually assess third-party solutions regarding bias in healthcare. Very interesting question. So it's specifically, is there a framework that you would recommend for health organizations to identify bias in medical algorithms for third-party vendors? I know you're doing some research in this area, Julia, I believe.
Yeah. So a lot of this is coming, and in many ways we are rushing ahead with adoption of software and of products and of practices before really understanding the benefits and the harms, and to whom these are the benefits and to whom they are the harms. So there is not currently a legally prescribed set of requirements even that would say that your medical software, for example, medical imaging or diagnosis, should be unbiased. And furthermore, there isn't really even a definition that we can operationalize and that we all agree on that would explain to us what bias really is. There are different types of bias that you can have. You have statistical bias and societal, and they are at odds with each other. So the best that I can suggest is for you to watch the space. And if you'd like to find out more, I'm happy to give additional pointers, maybe starting with my comics even.
Just to add on, from my perspective, like Julia said, at least in insurance, there aren't literally explicit guidelines telling you what you should and shouldn't do. And I feel like instead, those guidelines come more from the guardrails that you end up encountering throughout your academic experience in terms of ethics and what type of data you should collect and what type of processes you should be able to do. I feel like those help to instill a sense of ethical responsibility that you end up leveraging later on in your careers. Because in real time in the industry, there aren't those set concrete things. If anything, most of the time what you'll see is that tools will have to be built in-house by data scientists that are making up the rules with their expertise that they have been able to derive from their own respective experiences, either through industry and academia. So in terms of identifying a framework, I'd say make sure that you double down on the ethics courses that you have access to, and look for opportunities that could help to illuminate that space for you, because in real time, it's definitely a gray area for the industry, for sure.
And Shane, do you have anything to add since you're at Novartis? So you work in the healthcare space as well, and I know previously at Harvard.
I think it's a very important question for the healthcare study. For the industry like a pharma or the medical device, eventually our product will be reviewed by FDA. So having the unbiased or you can at least explain where the bias coming in. That's important. Regarding the framework, what will be the third-party tools? Honestly, we don't use the third-party. Mostly, we are knowledgeable about what the problem the data had, and then why we have this solution. So that's the reason we can avoid the bias, or we are knowledgeable where the bias will be, and what will be the possible risk factors when being deployed in clinics or for the consumer use. So in short, I would say the researchers themselves need to really know how the data look like, and then understand where the bias comes from. And yeah, that's our opinion.
Okay, that's great. And I want to add something before I do that. I know Julia has to run to another meeting. Julia, thank you for all your time today, but we're going to keep going until we're done because these are all such wonderful questions. So everyone who can stay, please do. Thank you very much, Julia.
Thank you. Sorry, bye-bye.
Not a problem. So one other answer I'd like to give to that question is that we actually have something that Haley mentioned, is that the Northeast Big Data Hub is working with IEEE, which is the Institute for Electrical and Electronics Engineers, an organization with over 400 people around the planet. We create standards. And I actually I chair a working group on clinical Internet of Things, data and device interoperability. We call it with TIPS. And it's about connected healthcare, and it's trust, identity, privacy, protection, safety, and security. And we actually have a workshop series going on. So I actually just put the link in for the privacy, ethics, and trust workshop we did that Julia actually was a panelist for. And if you go to that link, you can look at the whole series. We have another workshop coming up. They're free and open to everybody. You just have to register on data and device identity validation, interoperability, and connected healthcare. We did one on cybersecurity, and then we're going to have a technology and policy discussion in November. So I encourage you to check out this IEEE webinar series, workshop series that the Northeast Hub is doing with them. And there's a lot of this discussion going on. And then if you wanted to, for free, you could join the standards working group, because we're looking to create, we call this TIPS framework around trust, identity, privacy, protection, safety, and security. People involved in the working group are from Medtronic, from Draeger, from Indiana University Health, from academia, from all sorts of places, Intel, a lot of different places, because we all have to work this together, as well as Epic and Cerner. So please feel free to join in, and that might be interesting. Flavio, I think it's your turn to answer another question from the Q&A. You want to pick one?
Yeah, actually, this one's actually from a while ago, but I've also had the same question myself. This person asked, what is the best way to prepare for a data science interview?
Ooh, Edward and Shane, you've both gone through data science interviews and maybe interviewed people. Do you have any advice on the best way to prepare?
As far as preparation goes, I found it really helpful to really take control of the narrative and just really focus on the independent projects that I had on my plate at the time. Because what you can expect almost always is an overview of your programming experience with like a live coding example that might be provided to you. You might be asked to interpret a business problem in terms of a toy data set that's provided to you. You might be given a question about the industry itself, about current trends that you might be observing. And I felt that came naturally to me because as an undergrad student, I spent a lot of time making sure that the things that I was doing was really interesting to me so that I could really make the most out of it. So for example, for my honors thesis, I ended up doing something that incorporated virtual reality and exergaming in order to better understand what type of physical activity was better, or what type of physical activity people can make use of, given if they didn't have like a physical space to work in, or if they only had like the virtual reality headset and et cetera. And I did it because, first of all, virtual reality is cool, and I thought that'd be pretty fun. But at the same time, I paired that up with a data science pipeline that helped me analyze the data that was coming in for that project. So while I was doing that for school, I was also technically preparing for interviews that were coming along, because a lot of the skills that I had to make use of to analyze the data for that project were the types of skills that they would have been looking for in the interviews that were coming up. So by, I guess, preparing, by doing projects that make sense for you, I feel like that is a very effective strategy, because then you don't find yourself in the cycle of stressing out about specific questions that you might find on like question boards, or like specific things that might come up in whatever interview that you might find on Google. Because if anything, the interview is kind of meant to learn about you, learn about your skills, and see where you're coming from. And I think that's the best opportunity to kind of like put yourself on display in terms of what you've already been through in terms of your independent projects.
Shane, do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Yeah. So I would say the fundamental is the coding. Yeah, as I mentioned before, data is sitting there, and you need to have the capability to read and process, analyze the data. So coding is necessary. Coding actually is beyond just coding, but include like the fundamental algorithms. How do you program your code be perform quick enough? So you may want to review some algorithm, so you can have a better understanding what will be good and bad of the code. And the second would be actually fall into 3 different categories. So if you are looking for more like a data analytics or like a business analytics, I would say statistics will be important for you. if you are looking for core machine learning development, so you need to know the in and out of the machine learning models. Why this model is good, why is that bad? Or if your job is to use the machine learning models, yeah, of course you need to know why I need to pick that one instead of another one. You need to give the reason. And the reason is because it's better, right? So you need to understand the models, machine learning models in particular. The third one will be more like infrastructure. People usually say this will be like data engineering. So that means that include the whole architecture or infrastructure or the system, including the storage, networking, system design, how to allocate the security or protection. So I would say in these three categories, you need to be knowledgeable in one of them. Then the third possible would be like your conversation with the interviewer, or like soft skills, yeah, put in this way, yeah, how you present yourself. There are some times interviewees do not prepare very well. They are good at coding, but they cannot deliver their message clearly. So their result cannot be clearly articulated. So I have a hard time to understand the details. So that will be kind of be harmful. So this is not, yeah, soft skill is not the critical point, but it's good to be prepared. And I think this is the easiest one to prepare in advance. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Excellent advice. Well, I think we'll have just one more question. It's almost 4:30. We didn't expect to go so long. What a very interactive discussion. So I think Flavio, you asked the last one. So Gary, would you like to ask the last question?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Florence. Actually, I have a question that I would like to ask. So as a data scientist, it's better to learn as many domains of knowledge as possible, or it's better to be specialized in a single file?
Good question. A generalist or a specialty practitioner?
I think that's really hard to answer. I would say it's important to be really knowledgeable about specific domains that you're responsible for on whatever project it may be at your prospective career. But at the same time, I don't think learning ever stops. I feel like you're always trying to, well, you always should be always making sure that you're learning, you know, what's coming out, what's new, what's interesting, what makes sense for me. Because when you do that, you make yourself more flexible to adapt to new situations as they come along. So I'd say yes to an extent to both. You kind of want to make sure that you're great at what you do in those specific areas, but you also want to make sure that you're not pigeonholing yourself in an area that may become out of date in who knows how many years.
Very good advice. So Haley, do you want to wrap us up and tell people they can always go to the Slack channel for the rest of their questions? They feel free to put them in there and we can answer them.
Yeah, this was an amazing conversation amongst all of you. Thank you. I know Julia had to come off, but yeah, thank you all the panelists, Julia, Edwood, and Shane, and Abhishek, and all the people who asked questions, and Flavio and Gary for posing the questions. Thank you all for your thoughts, advice, and sharing your personal journeys with us all. Like many of the people who are tuned in today, like I'm at the beginning of my data science journey. And it's such an important tool, data science, in so many realms. And I'm just really grateful and happy that you all showcased that today. So yeah, I know there are a lot more questions that have gone unanswered, but yeah, we can keep the conversation going on the Slack channel. So we have continuously dropped the Slack channel link in the chat, and we'll do so again for you all to tune in there to, you know, keep the conversation going, talk about any questions, answers, or comments that you want discussed regarding data science and beyond. But thank you everyone for tuning in today. We're so happy to have all of you attend this great event. Thank you panelists, thank you moderators, thank you volunteers, thank you facilitators. This was an amazing event.
It was, and thank you Haley, Abhishek, Haruki, Helen, and Paula, who are the students on the Hub team who do this work every day, who we're very grateful for. And thank you for being role models and leaders. And Gary and Flavio, welcome to the volunteer team for the Hub and the NSDC. How cool is that? And I know we have a couple of people who volunteered already. So This is great. It's like a phone-a-thon. You guys are doing great. So thank you very much, everybody. And everyone be safe. And we do this every 2 months. So our next one is August 20th. Stay tuned to the nebigdatahub.org/NSDC to always see what we're up to. And use all the tools that you can. And good luck on your data science journey. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.